Welcome into Chicago Bears Now. I am your host, Harrison Graham. As the GM and coaching search continues to unwind in Chicago, we are to week 2 on this search as Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace got fired last Monday on NFL Black Friday, so we're about on day 8 of this. And you want this to heat up? How about Sean Payton? Could he be the next head coach? I'll go 2 smoking Jays. People are talking. Jane Slater of the NFL Network, and she also does some work with us, said earlier today, and we got a clip from her, so stay tuned, that Payton could and likely would draw interest from Chicago if he and New Orleans were to split. Now, there's not a lot of public knowledge out there on if that is going to be the case, if he even wants to be out of New Orleans, but we've said it for a while, and I've speculated that if he wants out of New Orleans, isn't this the time? Isn't this the time to go take a leap and coach somewhere else? They have no quarterback future in New Orleans, whereas in Chicago, he briefly played there. He grew up in Chicago. He got Justin Fields in place, with most teams and executives and coaches believe in him. So I think this could make some sense. Hear from Jane Slater, who joined the Cowboys Report earlier today, one of our Chat Sports YouTube channels. Just take a listen on what she had to say when it comes to Payton.
Jerry's had a love affair with Sean for a long time. He's deferred to Sean at times about his thoughts on this team. And there is a possibility that Sean could get out of his deal. But I think Sean is going to be highly coveted this offseason by teams like the Raiders, the Seahawks, the Bears, the Giants. Giants, of course, where he started his career. So he's got a great relationship with them. It's a big market. And then there's a lot of talk about media. Does Amazon make a play for them as they're trying to build this dream team? So he's got a lot of options. We'll see what happens with Sean. It's just, it's like death and taxes. We talk about Sean every time there's a question about this coaching search.
So obviously Tom brought up that question with Jane because the whole Mike McCarthy issue in Dallas. But Jane mentioned the Bears specifically as a team that she believes would draw interest for his services. I find that very interesting. I think I've said it for a couple months. The Bears should pursue Sean Payton. I'm saying it here again. It's been quiet around him the last week or so, but maybe things ramp up a little bit here, and he's looking for an exit strategy in New Orleans. We'll see on that side of it. But she's absolutely right. If Sean Payton becomes available, teams will come calling for him to be their next head coach. I think he would be an awesome fit in Chicago. He knows the city. He knows the franchise. I think he can maximize Justin Fields. Let's ride. I think Sean Payton would be absolutely fantastic. So we'll make this the pinned comment on today's video. Should the Bears go after Sean Payton? Type Y for yes. Type in for no. Sean Payton pursue the Bears, I should ask as well. Get your votes in. Reply to the pinned comment after this YouTube ad break. More Bears Rumors Roundup items here. More on the coaching front. How about Jim Harbaugh? It's been a little quiet around him with the Bears, right? Is he no longer an option? I won't go 4 smoking Jays. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's pretty likely that he's not really in the mix anymore, at least not at this point in time. I just don't see it happening based on the chatter that is out there. Now, Jumbo Elliott, who played at Michigan, is tapped into the University of Michigan football program, where, of course, Harbaugh is the coach. He tweeted out, heard from a little birdie that Harbaugh is interested in the Raiders and the Giants, both of which are open coaching jobs right now. Someone even tweeted at him, what about the Bears? And he actually replied with a no. Now, that just means he hasn't heard anything about Harbaugh and the Bears specifically, but let's be honest, there's been no chatter publicly about the Bears and Jim Harbaugh. Now, Harbaugh moves in a stealthy kind of way. He's pretty sneaky about this stuff, so you don't really know what's happening with him, but I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. I'd love to be wrong. Him and Sean Payton, who we just talked about, have been my 2, home run targets from the beginning, understanding that both are long shots. But I think if you're the Chicago Bears, you should do your due diligence on both and see if either is even an option. And if they aren't, then, you keep going through your process, right? But I think at this point, barring a change, barring some momentum in a different direction, I don't think Harbaugh's coming to the Bears. That's just how I feel. I'd love for it to happen because his resume speaks for itself. He rebuilds programs in a hurry. San Diego took over a dormant Stanford program, took them to a BCS game, beat USC, which was unheard of at the time. San Francisco Didn't make the playoffs in almost a decade. He goes there 3 straight NFC title games and including a Super Bowl appearance. Michigan just got him to the college football playoff. They've been in the mix in the Big Ten every year. Overall, 90-plus games over 500. Like Jim Harbaugh wins. Sometimes he outwears his welcome. I think there's a lot of truth to that. But you know what? If you have him for 5 years, make the playoffs 4 times, make a couple of conference championship games, maybe a Super Bowl, isn't it worth it? I definitely think so. So should the Bears go all in, put your chips in the table and say, screw it, I'm going all in even though I've only got, queen 10 in my hand. Type 1 for yes, type 0 for no. I think they should take a big swing here. We'll see what happens in the coming days and potentially weeks as this continues to unfold. Now, I will say this. I think the reason, if I had to connect dots and just guess, that the Bears and Harbaugh, that there hadn't been a lot of chatter there is, I think he wants some roster control. Whether it's full roster control or at least some roster control, I think he probably wants that, and that's really not how the Bears operate. They hire a GM who runs all of the football operations. That's his department, and then they have a head coach. They don't really give the head coach football operation, authority. Now, I'm sure Matt Nagy had some input with Ryan Pace on, the type of players they wanted to bring in there, but those were Pace decisions, pretty much for the most part, outside of maybe a couple of the quarterback moves. That was a Pace thing, and that's how the Bears are structured. Now, you can question whether they have the proper structure. I think they should have someone between the GM and George McCaskey that's not named Ted Phillips. They should hire a real president of football operations. I actually think that's something a guy like Louis Riddick would be good at, and then you have a GM under him. But I think Harbaugh, if he's going to leave Michigan, it's going to cost a lot of money, and you're going to have to give him some roster control, and I'm not sure the Bears are prepared to do the latter part of that. Make sure you guys subscribe because whatever happens, whether I like it or not, based on the hiring choices, we're going to break it all down for you guys. Subscribe to Bears Now. If you missed Monday's video, we crossed 40,000 subs. That is fantastic. I appreciate you guys. The drive to 50K is underway. So hit that big red subscribe button. Daily videos, news, rumors, free agency, draft, coaching, GM search. We've got it all. YouTube.com/BearsNow is the place to go. All right, let's keep it moving here. Do the Bears really like Brian Flores? I'm going to go 3 Smoking Jays on this one as well. I think it's pretty likely based on what's out there. Some leaks out of his interview. It sounded like he interviewed pretty well. And then now you've got Charles Robinson, who's tapped into the NFL with Yahoo Sports on a podcast the other night saying the Bears are, quote, very smitten with Brian Flores. He did mention some other things. I didn't transcribe the full quote. It's too long, but I'll paraphrase it for you guys. Basically, he mentioned that from what he's heard, Flores would want to take lead in the organization. Not meaning that the GM has no input, but like a coach-driven organization. Honestly, he's probably getting that from Bill Belichick, who he coached under for a while up in New England. I think there were issues in Miami, structure power between him and the general manager. He wants more control than he had in Miami. And then he added this as well, Robinson did. He said, oh, and by the way, he wants a top 5 NFL quarterback, which is why Flores and Deshaun Watson have been connected for quite a while, even though Watson has all of his legal issues still ongoing. What I would say to all that is, I mean, Brian, do you want ownership stakes as well? Like, you've done well as a head coach, but you've never even made the playoffs. Like, yeah, I don't know how much of this is true from Charles Robinson in terms of how much control and power he wants, but, like, he's acting like he has more skins on the wall than he actually does. Now, do I think he got a raw deal in Miami? I do. I think them firing him was a joke. I think that he had that franchise in the right direction, a franchise that, quite frankly, hasn't won at a high level in a very, very long time and very little throughout their history. But this isn't, John Harbaugh or someone like that. This isn't Mike Tomlin, guys who have, 10-plus winning seasons and Super Bowls and stuff like that. This is Brian Flores, who was groomed under the GOAT, Bill Belichick, but has never even made the playoffs, guys. So I like Flores, but you can't just hand the keys to the entire franchise to the guy. Not saying he necessarily wants that, but if you take what Charles Robinson has to heart, then he wants more than what he had in Miami. There's no doubt about that. And plus, I also have question marks like, does he not like Justin Fields then? And if that's the case, that's kind of a non-starter for me. Would you hire Brian Flores? Type H for hire, type P for pass. Let us know down in the comments. Again, I like Flores. I'm not opposed to hiring him. He's probably a top 5 candidate for me right now. But I want to make this clear. I also want someone who believes in Justin Fields, and maybe Brian Flores does. I'm not saying any of what Charles Robinson said necessarily would indicate that he doesn't believe in Fields. but it does indicate that he didn't believe in Tua and that he wanted a better quarterback there so he could win at a higher level. If he doesn't think Fields is ready or Fields is that guy, he may come in there and try to force a change at quarterback. And, I don't know how I feel about that, if I'm being honest. I want to give Justin Fields a real chance and build around him to be the franchise guy in Chicago. So that's kind of the latest on Flores, the latest rumors around him. Obviously, more to come in the upcoming days and weeks. BetUS is today's sponsor of Chicago Bears Now, and shout out to them because I'm making money throughout the NFL playoffs, and I've already made my picks for this upcoming weekend. These are the 4 matchups. Here are my 4 picks. I like the Bengals getting 3.5 on the road at Tennessee. I think that they win that game outright. I might put some money on Bengals money line because I really think they beat the Titans. I like the under in Green Bay, San Francisco. It's supposed to snow earlier in the day when they play on Saturday. Temperatures in the teens. I know both those teams can score, but I think that's like a 24-20 type of game. Give me the under 47.5 there. I like the over Rams Tampa. Good weather, 2 good quarterbacks. The defenses are obviously good, but 48.5 isn't like a crazy number. I think that game could easily be 28-24, 28-27, 31-28, something like that. And then I like the Chiefs. Only 2.5 point favorites at home against Buffalo. I get it. The Bills beat them earlier this year at Arrowhead Stadium, but this is the 2-time defending AFC champions. Like, I think Kansas City basically a pick-em against Buffalo at home in prime time on Sunday night. Yeah, I'll take the Chiefs in those circumstances. So go take advantage. Chatsports.com/Bears, promo code BEARDOWN to go bet on some NFL games. Let's keep it moving here. Are the Bears going to hire a general manager this week? I'll go 2 Smoking Jays. People are talking. It's possible. If it does happen, I think it would be, this weekend, Friday, Saturday, on into Sunday maybe, because they still have guys to interview. Jason Leisure of the Chicago Sun-Times basically wrote an article saying they need to pick a GM this week. They need to speed up this process. Now, once we get through the end of Tuesday, which is today, Chicago will have interviewed 9 candidates, but they still are requesting interviews as recent as Monday and currently have 6 more interviews slated. Now, all those times and dates haven't been announced. Maybe they don't end up interviewing all 6 of those guys that are still on the docket here, but surely the Bears can start narrowing this down, right? Like 15 candidates, get it down to 5. Like, get it down to 5 by this weekend. Do your second round of interviews, fly some folks into Hallis Hall, do those interviews in person, and then by middle next week, make a choice. I mean, that's kind of how I feel. That's kind of what I think is going to happen. So I don't think it'll be this week. I think it's more likely it's going to be next week. Here are the interviews that have already happened. Glenn Cook, who I've heard drew rave reviews, the Browns Vice President of Player Personnel. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, also with the Browns Vice President of Football Operations, an internal interview. Champ Kelly, the Assistant General Manager. We'll see if he stays and gets a promotion. Jeff Ireland, the Saints Assistant GM as well. I heard good things from the Monty Osenfor interview, the Director of Player Personnel with the Tennessee Titans. And then these 4 as well have been completed. Joe Shane, who is a finalist for the Giants GM opening. He actually had a second interview with New York here on Tuesday. Ed Dodds, who interviewed on Monday. I'm really high on him. He's been my top guy from the jump. Elliot Wolf, the Director of Scouting in New England, and then Morocco Brown, Director of College Scouting with Indianapolis. Those are both happening today on Tuesday. I just wanted to include them with the completed GM interviews because by the end of the day, those will be done. But there's still 6 other guys that are supposed to interview at some point. Not all these are scheduled, but there are some names here where I'm like, I want them to interview him too. Rand Carthen, Director of Player Personnel in San Francisco. I definitely want them to interview Rick Smith, the ex-GM with the Texans. I think he could do well in this job. Omar Khan's the guy I'm interested in. Vice President of Football and Business Administration in Pittsburgh. You got these lined up as well. JoJo Wooden, the Director of Player Personnel with the Chargers. Reggie McKenzie, former Raiders GM, most recently this past season, Senior Executive front office member with the Miami Dolphins. And then Ryan Poles, Executive Director of Player Personnel with Kansas City. He is also getting a second interview with the Giants as well. So Giants going a lot faster, which, look, I think this drags into next week, and I think that's okay. But by the middle of next week, you need to have a GM in place, I think. I'm not saying rush it. I think by then you will have been 2.5 weeks in. That should be enough time to make a decision. That's not a rush. That's a thorough search. And, I think we could start hearing some, finalists by later this week. And then, something, could be real early, mid next week. That's kind of what I'm thinking the timeline is. So 2 Smoking Jays in terms of getting it done this week. But I do think we'll have some real momentum by the end of the week heading into next week. Do you trust the Bears search team led by George McCaskey. Hopefully Bill Polian's leading it. Type T for trust, type D for don't. I just want to know, do you trust this process? All right, real quick on the coaching side of it, we got some, confirmed dates. Byron Leftwich will interview Thursday or Friday. We'll see. I'm sure it depends on the Bucs practice schedule and all that stuff as they get ready for the Rams. Leslie Frazier on Friday. Todd Bowles and Dan Quinn both on Saturday. Quinn getting a lot of interest. I think he's got 4 interviews lined up, so keep that in mind. My final thoughts on this, get the GM in place. Late this week, middle next week, whatever. For sure by next week. And then you ramp up your coaching search. Because I think that's kind of the next process. Like, okay, you've interviewed some coaches, but once you bring in the GM, he might have a list of candidates he wants to be connected to an interview as well. So that's my process. We'll see if the Bears end up doing just that. But again, subscribe because as news and rumors continue to unfold around this stuff, we will continue to keep you guys up to date. So go ahead and hit that sub button.